join an immense responsibility. How Harry S. Truman's steadfast beliefs led to a global turning point. I can start when you're ready. 1950s, Independence, Missouri. Hello, Harry S. Truman here. Former U.S. Senator from Missouri, former U.S. Vice President, and former U.S. President. Maybe you've heard of me. Maybe you've heard how I was promoted to president shortly after President Roosevelt's death, when our country was deeply involved in World War II. Suddenly, it was my job to lead America through this war. I felt like the moon, the stars, and all the planets had fallen on me. Germany was about to surrender, but Japan was a different story. The war needed a turning point. We were planning a land invasion of the Japanese home islands, but this would mean around 250,000 U.S. soldiers would be killed or injured. And you don't feel normal when you have to plan the deaths of so many American boys who are alive and joking and having fun while you're doing the planning. You probably know that in the end, I decided to use the new atomic weapon to end the war with Japan. Many would say that dropping the atomic bomb on Japan was the most significant decision of my presidency, and I suppose they are right. But for me, it was not a hard decision. I have always been highly concerned with the well-being of U.S. soldiers. When I was a battery commander in World War I felt personal responsibility for the lives of the men under my command. Later, during my time as a U.S. Senator, it broke my heart when the sons of my World War I comrades lost their lives in World War II. Using the bomb was a terrible decision, but I made it. And I made it to save 250,000 boys from the United States, and I'd make it again under similar circumstances. August 13th, 1918, France, World War I. Why, hello, McKim. I've just been writing a letter to my fiancée, Bess. It's good to see you. So, after a month of having me command your battery, what do you think? I let you know who was boss. Well, I had to, because you boys were a bit of a wild bunch at first, but now I'm plumb crazy about you. Commanding 4 guns and 194 men is no small task, and I certainly feel a personal responsibility for you fellows. Well, good to see you, McKim. Now, back to my letter to Bess. You've no idea what an immense responsibility it is to take 194 men to the front. They are absolutely dependent on my small ability to think and act at the right time for their lives. If I should go up there and get them all killed and didn't get shot myself, I'd certainly never be able to look anyone in the face again. August 1944, Washington, D.C. I sure do get a lot of mail, but that's no surprise, considering I am a United States Senator. Now that I've been nominated as FDR's running mate for his 4th term, this mail should keep up. Well, look at this. A letter from A.B. Burkhart, my old friend from the war. His son Bob is a Marine. Let's see what he has to say today. We received a telegram telling us that Bobby was killed in action. You knew the boy, what a good boy he was, and how much I loved him. Captain Harry, I know you couldn't be a revengeful beast, but please, keep our government tough enough so that the lives that have been lost will not again have been wasted. Dear Amy, I don't think I've had a letter in 10 years which has hit me as hard as yours did. These sons of D Battery, I feel, are as close to me as if they were really grandsons of mine. Amy isn't the only one. My other friend, Eddie McKim, had a boy killed last month. Ed Jr. had a newborn son that he never got to meet. I'll need to call Bess and tell her about this. Brings the war close to home when boys you know are its victims. Avi and Eddie's boys were the kind you hoped to see grow up. June 18th, 1945, the White House. Well, it's certainly an honor to meet with the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States military. Now that President Roosevelt has died, and I am president, I am responsible for leading America through this war. As Admiral Lydia expressed in his memorandum a few days ago, I called this meeting for the purpose of becoming better informed of our plans to invade Japan. My goal is to defeat Japan with as few American casualties as possible. I'm not nearly as concerned with how much time or money it takes. General Marshall, why don't you start? An invasion of the Japanese island of Kyushu would be the best option. Starting November 1st. Yes, Admiral Leahy, I would like to know what the casualties would be. 35%? General Marshall, of how many? 700,000? That's what, 250,000 American boys? Yet you, the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States military, view this invasion as the best option. Now, Secretary of War Stimson, at a meeting a few months ago, you informed me that the U.S. would soon complete a very powerful weapon, so powerful that a single bomb could destroy a whole city. But since this weapon isn't yet a reality, we must go on with the invasion. July 25th, 1945, Potsdam, Germany. Lord Mountbatten, General Marshall, thank you for meeting with me. We are currently preparing to invade Japan, but I was recently informed that the U.S. has successfully tested a new atomic weapon. This is the most terrible bomb in the history of the world, but I believe it could end our war with Japan and make the invasion unnecessary. Are we in agreement then? Let's do it. It's time to turn this war around. March 12, 1959, Independence, Missouri. The City Council of Hiroshima, Japan, has published a resolution protesting certain remarks of mine about the atomic bomb, which were recently aired on television. The atomic bomb was unquestionably a destructive weapon. It is estimated that the two bombs killed around 100,000 people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yet the people of Hiroshima are not the only ones who have disagreed with my decision. In Potsdam, General Eisenhower was opposed to using the bomb. A few days after the first bomb was dropped, I received a telegram from a pastor informing me that many Christians were deeply disturbed over the use of the bomb. Even the scientists who developed the bomb had serious moral concerns. Yet the people of Hiroshima are right. I do not feel any regrets. My whole life, I have felt an immense responsibility for the lives of U.S. soldiers. The war needed a turning point, and the atomic bomb provided it. When I made the decision, I couldn't worry about what history would say about my personal morality. I did what I thought was right.
Thank you very much.
Could you tell us, I mean, you do answer pretty well, I think, in your process paper, but could you tell us a little more about why you picked this topic, and give us a little narrative of your progress towards creating this script and your performance?
So I picked this topic because I wanted to research the presidential library, and I've always been interested in the atomic bomb. It's always just fascinated me, just the mind things that would go on with having this powerful of a weapon and knowing what do you do with it. And I thought it would make an interesting performance because I was like, it'd be fun, or not fun, but interesting to dive into like how is he deliberating and going back and forth, and that'd be a lot to act. But what I realized was that he was very matter of fact, and he made up his mind. And for a while, I didn't really know why. I thought maybe he's just kind of cold or something and doesn't really care. And then as I said in my process paper, as I realized that it was his concern and his responsibility that he felt for the U.S. soldiers that he believed would be saved from the bomb, that allowed him to be so matter of fact and not ever doubt on his decision. And like, it's not necessarily what I would have even wanted, because it's not as interesting necessarily to perform, but it is what, you know, what it is.
All right, thank you. From your process paper, your presentation,
Yeah.
performance, you made it clear that the president took that bold step chiefly because people who are closer to him died in the war.
Right.
Did you find anything in your research that shows whether the president was concerned about humanity? Because Japanese were human beings too.
Right, yes.
Did you find anything in his writing, whether in the course of your research at the library or reading material, that showed that he had this consideration that Japanese were human beings too?
Yes, so that's something that, like, I will say Truman, I mean, I don't know if he was racist, but he definitely probably valued the Americans over the Japanese. It's just, you know, how it is. There is one letter that I didn't quote, but it was written to him by a U.S. senator who basically was like telling him, you are being too nice, which, you know, he was like, you need to drop even more bombs, and he was like, well, I don't want to kill any more Japanese people than necessary. And he actually said, I have a humane feeling for them, but he just was like, he viewed saving the American soldiers as necessary to killing the Japanese civilians. And I think that's just kind of how he viewed it. And, you know, for him, the Americans were, as a U.S. president, I think he felt a responsibility for the Americans, and the Japanese were the enemy. I mean, I don't know, it's complicated. And he didn't just want to kill them for the sake of killing them, but also he felt like it was just necessary.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is there, I see you only use one secondary source, which is a good one. Is this something that, you know, fitting with my colleague's question here, is that something that you could use to kind of expand your performance, see if anyone else wrote something that could put, you know, his decision-making in process? Is there anything else you encountered that you didn't have a chance to use that you might want to use?
I don't know. I just really tried to focus on the primary sources, and I tried really hard to gather opinions that he would have known about instead of things that people thought of now. There are a lot of things written about it. I just kind of had to choose what I wanted to prioritize.
Wait, you have a 10-minute limit.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, history is useless unless we as the modern contemporary human beings learn from it.
Right.
Would you say that America has learned anything from that decision by the president?
I don't know. It's so hard, and like I said, I don't even know if I agree with him or not, because when you read the reports of how damaging the bomb was to innocent people, you think, well, that's terrible. I think what we can learn is that we should try to avoid war in the first place, because the main thing I thought of is war is just terrible for everybody involved. People, no matter how you do it, there's going to be innocent people who are going to suffer. And so I best lesson to take is just don't do everything you can to avoid an armed conflict, because it's just not good at all. And it's just terrible how many people suffered. No matter what he would have done, there would have been innocent people who would have been killed and injured and all that.
And I will say that this isn't exactly a question, but tying into his First World War experience was a good way of making that connection that he, was a frontline soldier and responsible for other folks.
And like he saw conflict himself, and I think that might have had an influence on why he was so worried about the soldiers, because like he knew what it was like. He'd never been in a city where an atomic bomb was dropped. So I think his personal experience led him to be more concerned with the soldiers, because he had memories of how that felt to be, fighting and everything.
Yeah, especially a pretty rough conflict. The U.S. was only in the First World War for a year and a half and suffered almost half as many casualties as in the entire Second World War. So.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us?
I don't guess so.
Well, then thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.